9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon. I almost said good morning, but I guess it's only good morning to those of you who live in other time zones yet. So good afternoon. I'm constitutional attorney Katherine Henry, and this is Liberty Lori. And we want to welcome you to Restore Freedom Weekly, episode 48 already. That seems crazy. And it seems like a lot in some respects, I guess, to me, but in other respects, we did hundreds of videos, hundreds and thousands of hours long of videos in 2020 alone. So really 48 shouldn't seem like a lot to me, but these are a little bit more fine-tuned and composed or planned and whatnot. So I'm going to apologize to those of you who are watching and not just going to be listening on the podcasting platforms later with this episode, because it's another super humid day in Florida. And so what does that mean? My hair is not going to dry until maybe about 8 o'clock tonight. And then if it does,
but I think it looks great.
Well, it looks like my computer's having a hard time or like the camera's having a hard time even focusing on my hair because of because it's wet. So I do have hair. I'm not trying something funky. I'm not trying to be distracting with the video today, but wanted to forewarn you that I can't do anything about it. It just won't dry today. All right, so okay. Oh, great. We have somebody on here that I want to help us get this topic rolling. First of all, hello to John on YouTube, Rick on Facebook, the Liberty Cause on YouTube, Don on Facebook, or excuse me, on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us today and for commenting to let us know you're there. And it looks like, well, thank you to the person commenting on YouTube who also at times throws hair in a ponytail. So that's what I started with. And I've been trying to heed your advice. I know my husband also likes my hair down, but dang, it just won't dry. So anyway, we do have a question. Our very first one was actually before the live stream was even scheduled to start. And it was what to do if a city wants to hide stuff and says your records request will be over $1,000. That is a very good question. And Lori, I don't know, can you make yourself a little note? I want to come back to that later because it's going to be I want to give it the most context, and that'll be an important one to address. So let's see. Oh, interesting. All right.
Oops.
So
I didn't. I think I was trying to turn it off while you were. I'll let you control the chat.
Well, let's see here. First of all, to those of you who just might be wondering about the Mr. Katherine Henry, as he calls himself, he is here, but he's on Rumble. And Rumble, unfortunately, so far is one of those that we love to get people over on and watching us live, but you just can't comment live because we can't see that in the software that we're using. It doesn't pull that way. But anyway, just keep throwing this up every so often, Lori, if there's a lull in conversation. God bless the Constitution. But my first ooh that I saw before we really got started was a comment from, I can't see what the rest of We the People FOIA.
We the People FOIA, yep.
Is the name on YouTube. So thank you for joining us, We the People FOIA. And the comment is draft legislation that requires a document management and repository standard. What's funny is, and I don't remember, We the People FOIA, if you're someone that I know or not personally, if you're from Michigan or not, but if you know anything about the Restore Freedom Initiative petition, which started, I guess I'll just stand up a little bit so you guys can see. This was one of the shirts we had initially. Oh, Lori's got the sweatshirt on there. That's where the Restore Freedom name came from initially. My law firm was its own thing. But in that petition, part of what was in there was that government entities of all shapes and sizes, of all levels, of all branches, had to have a record-keeping system that made sense and that was automatically putting documents and videos and whatever, any kind of public records, that it was more held online than it was not. So that, less and less public records or FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, even would have to be made. And in that system, it was talking about then if people made additional requests where information was determined, oh, that isn't online yet, well, then they would then have to go and put it online as well in those circumstances. And then all Freedom of Information Act requests would be free because it would just be putting it on the internet and providing the person who's requesting it with the link to that exact information. There's no printing needed. The time should not be charged to anybody because we already pay them for their time. They shouldn't get paid again for us to get information when they work for us. That's just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Yes, I'm going to go hire an employee to work for my law firm, and I'm going to have to pay them a salary. And then on top of that, every time I ask them to do something, give me information so that I can continue to do my job, I'm going to have to pay them again just to give me that information. That's not how this works. So at any rate, we're going to get going here on the topic. But all right, so.
And just to go back to the petition, you have told people that you'd be willing to be that attorney for the petition if they wanted to run it again. So if somebody wants to start taking your petition seriously, they can do the boots on the ground stuff, but you'll be that one in any court at any time fighting it for them. So
yep, and I just paid the $450 to renew my state bar license in Michigan. So, and by the way, it is, what is it called? Giving Tuesday, I think is what they call it.
I was just thinking that too.
So keep in mind, guys, since the beginning of 2020, I have sat aside paid cases, thousands of paid cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars I could have been making, if not more. I mean, quite frankly, I could have made more.
For the calls that I've been getting, you would have had some really huge cases.
Right.
That we just can't take.
Groundbreaking cases. I set aside those because I'm only one person, and I would rather help the many if I have to choose between helping a few or helping the many. So I participated in cases, arguing in the Supreme Court, etc., where my work was literally going to impact directly all of the people in the entire state of Michigan, for example. And I will continue to work on cases where I will have that the most impact. But I do this show now because I also want to make sure I'm giving you guys information. It's one thing for me to be out there fighting the freedom fight, but what good is it going to do if I'm the only one really doing it? You guys need to be empowered to do things. That's the point of today's episode. You need to be given the tools. Sometimes they're just really easy and simple, and people think, wait, that's really going to do something? Yeah. And we're going to tell you about those. And sometimes they're more complicated, and it's about legal briefs or arguments or, court proceedings. And that all needs to be made much more tangible, much more real, much more accessible to the average person. I'm sick and tired of having to rely on attorneys and judges to fix crap around here because legislatures don't know what they're doing. but the courts don't know what they're doing either. And certainly way too many attorneys don't quite get it right, don't quite argue the concepts that need to be argued, and they charge a lot of money. And well, I know why they charge a lot of money, because well, we have a lot of student loan debt. So even with Biden's plan, because my student loans are too old to have gotten a single ounce of any of the Trump or Biden student loan relief, just for what it's worth, that since COVID, my student loans literally have gotten zero relief. So anyway, Giving Tuesday, please consider that all the work that we're doing is for free and we're not made of money. This house that we have down here in Florida is a quarter of the size of the one that we had in Michigan where we were running all the petitions through. And so, we're living, to the best of our means, but shoot, that $450 or $446, whatever it was, that I just had to pay yesterday to renew my Michigan law license, where's that going to come from if I'm not able to take paid cases because I'm doing this work?
Thanks, Mike, for working.
Yeah, well, thanks, Mike, for working, but that doesn't cover all of it. We still got kids.
Yeah, I know.
So anyway, okay. All right, we got, I guess, Lori, let me know if we have some other stuff, comments and things I need to address, but otherwise, let's get started because I didn't even tell you what we're doing here today. So like I said, this is episode 48 already, and I probably, I haven't even had a chance to tell Lori or Mike my thoughts on this yet, but I'm probably going to have to look at the calendar this week and determine how many more episodes we'll do yet in 2022 because, well, this week's already December. How is that a thing?
I know.
But anyway, hey, at least in Florida, it's still like 70 and 80 and sun shining.
I wouldn't be able to wear this sweatshirt, would I?
All my Michigan followers just went click, nope, on to the next. But anyway, so it's, it's obviously hard for us to do things like last week. I pre-recorded and then even shared the Constitution segment recap video since Thursday obviously was Thanksgiving and I wanted to spend some time with family. But we're going to have to keep that in mind that you too are going to, be wanting to spend some time with your family during the holidays and have a balance of, well, gosh, you might have some free time off of work. That would be a great time for you to catch up on some of these concepts or hear about things maybe for the first time. But also knowing that every one of us, including Lori and Mike and I, will need to have some sort of time off here and to make sure we're totally regrouped and ready to go to roll right into 2023 and make some waves because trust me, 2023 is going to be much more of a splash than what I was able to make in 2022. So, I guess I actually have to share the presentation in order for it to help anybody. So before we do that, I'm going to show you something. So Lori and I will just be off in the teeny tiny corner down here. So we have White Lake Township Board meeting. Very small room, it looks like, but proportionally speaking, lots of people there. Babies, older people, people that are middle-aged. We have a gentleman up there speaking. We have somebody over here recording what he's saying. We have Alamo Township Board meeting. I don't know what the size of Alamo Township is, but I haven't heard of it.
It's small.
So I was going to say, this might be everybody in the township.
It's over by Kalamazoo.
But look at that. They had to move the meeting to a gym. I'm assuming they're a high school or middle school gym. And at any rate, they are holding their meeting as in an impromptu location to try to accommodate. Because as you can see, there's tons of people that look like they're standing over on the sides and in the back. And then you have this person who is speaking up at this podium right here during this meeting. So that is wonderful. You have Fox News covering the fact that Dearborn, Michigan, school boards School board ended a meeting after parents boo a member of the school board. But you can see lots of people are here speaking, or here to at least observe, if not speak. And that's some of the things we're going to be talking about. So let me pause for a quick second and say, this topic is important no matter what state you live in. I'm not covering just Michigan stuff. I'm not covering just Florida stuff. I'm going to give you some examples today of Michigan and Florida things, some actual real live events from those states, some constitutional provisions from those states. But this is something that no matter what state you live in, you need to hear this. And even if you're someone who's been active, even for decades, there's still things that you might not quite have put together in this way before. So although we are getting, I don't know, we have some interesting things we're throwing out there at the beginning here to you and to those of you who are listening on podcasting platforms later. Don't worry, there's not going to be a whole ton of visual things that you're missing out on, but at any rate, this is the Livingston Township Board meeting. Again, very, very small area or room, and you can see that they have people that are here. The board members sit around this table, and then you have not even a podium, but just a microphone set up, and this individual is up there talking. Looks like they only have maybe 2, possibly 3 rows of chairs in this room, and then tons of people standing even outside of the doorway there for whatever topic. This is Fenton Township Board meeting. That is around the Flint area, I believe Genesee County, and looks like quite a big room. And although there are some empty chairs, it looks like kind of a packed house there. And of course, we have a gentleman here who is up speaking during public comment time there. Dickinson County, we have people here, and looks like they're actually holding that in a courthouse. So sometimes if they know they're going to have a hotly contested, hotly debated issue, and they're going to have more people from the public showing up than normally would come to the meetings, they are required under Michigan law to go to another location that is feasible to make things happen. Okay, Cedar Springs board meeting. It says county, but there's no Cedar Springs County in Michigan. I'm not sure if that was the township.
That would be my fault.
Okay. I'm assuming it's township. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think.
Yeah. I just got caught up in the.
But that's a northern Grand Rapids, Michigan area, so western side of the state. And man, that is a packed house. Still though, and actually, yeah, you can't even see all the people that are there because you can see way out at the door here. There are people that are outside. It looks like possibly outside of the building there for the meeting, which reminds me, I didn't even think to try to grab one of the pictures from just last year in September. I think it was September at the Ottawa County Commissioners meeting. Where they had over 1,000 people show up last minute to an Ottawa County Commissioners meeting to address some of the concerns over how the local government had been handling things. This is Kent County Board meeting. Now that's Grand Rapids and the surrounding cities. So the Cedar Springs one is actually in Kent County. Ironic that this one only has like one other dude in the room. But I could tell you where they hold these meetings is a smaller, it's a smaller room. And I find it quite interesting. I think it's press that gets to sit back here at the tables. And I think I've been in this particular room. It looks like there's their normal room. Interesting. I don't remember there being this area that's roped off. Like you can't even, how dare you think to come close to the people that work for you. But at any rate, it looks like we have a gentleman here who is sharing his thoughts with the board meeting, with the board members there. Berrien County board meeting, very small quarters there. And interesting that the names here are shown sideways so that the chair of the meeting could call people out. But I sure hope that means the names are displayed on the other side as well, so that the members of the public can also see who is speaking and sharing their thoughts. St. Clair County Board meeting, not a ton of people here, but there are some, and definitely, obviously, people that are here speaking. So why am I showing you this? I guess you're going to see as we go on here. So, all right, I'm going to switch over to this. Okay, so, oh, I'm stretching the wrong thing. Trying to make best use of our size of our screen here. Okay. So, this is, like I said, episode 48 of Restored Freedom Weekly. And our topic today is how to stand up to local government. It might seem simple, but it's that straightforward. How to stand up and fight back legally to local government when they go astray, when they act in a tyrannical fashion, when they're trampling your rights. Is your local government trampling your rights? Are you afraid to stand up against them? Maybe you just don't know how to do it. Well, today we're going to be covering the basics of the true powers of local government. Far too many people think that they have much more power than what they do. How those powers relate to your individual rights. What you can do when those municipalities or local governments trample your rights. And we're going to give you some real life testimonies of legal ways to fight back. I have a lot of talking to do in 4 minutes before our special guest. Oh, and our special guest is already ready. Hey, Lori, can you do me a favor? Can you shoot a text over to our special guest in that group chat and just clarify if I'm going to need to have, I see there's 2 that have joined in. So if I'm just showing the one or both and that kind of thing when we get to that point.
Yep.
Oh, and it looks like we have some cleanup to do on aisle 3. When you're done with that, Lori, we have some YouTube stuff that needs to be banned.
I actually got those.
Okay.
I got both of them. They're going to still show on our side, but they're gone on the other side.
Okay. Oh, there's 2 sets of them, it looks like.
Yep. And they're all gone.
Okay.
I got Jeff helping in the background. Oops, sorry.
Okay. No one knows of which the person is that we speak. Anyway. All right. So our true or false question of today, which is out there, it's still live for you to participate in. Several options exist to fight back. Several options exist to fight back when local governments trample your rights. You as an individual. Options for you. Please, if you haven't done it yet today, take the few seconds, especially, while you're watching this episode or listening to it later this afternoon on the podcasting platforms, or, when you get home from work today or whatever, take a few seconds, find this question in a poll on Twitter, Telegram, LinkedIn, Truth Social, YouTube, or even on our website, restorefreedomkh.com/updates, and you'll be able to see the link to answer there without having to need any kind of email address or social media credentials. You can just answer it anonymously that way. All right, so I know you guys have heard these things many times from me, but this is important to understanding today's topic. The basics that we need to remember: governments are instituted to protect our God-given rights. We get our rights from God, not the government. Government, though, has absolutely no rights. No government has any rights. In fact, government only has those powers which we delegate to it. So, couple of things to keep in mind with that it's we the people that created our Constitution and our very form of government. And the U.S. Constitution, the one we started with, is the supreme law of the land. This means that government cannot act unless there is a specific power delegated or granted by the Constitution And government is prohibited from doing anything that violates the U.S. or state constitutions. And every government official is sworn to the constitutional oath of office. But here's, from a different perspective, summarizing this concept in a way that we haven't talked about before. And sorry, guys, my allergies are really kicking up in the last couple days, so it's starting to get to me. But anyway, so this is a different perspective, like I said, than what we've covered before. But federal government only has those powers which we delegate to it through the U.S. Constitution. That's our federal government. State government only has those powers which were delegated to it in the U.S. or state constitutions. So the U.S. Constitution does have a few, very few, places where specific authorities or powers are itemized or talked about. The ones that come to my mind are things of like powers of the chief executive, a governor, or the chief elections official, which would be the Secretary of State for most states, what their roles are in different scenarios. And local government only has those powers delegated to it in the state constitution, because no powers are delegated to local governments in the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution doesn't set things up in a way that local governments, first of all, even have to exist, but secondarily, that if they exist, that they have certain functions or duties or powers to do anything. None of that happens in the U.S. Constitution for local governments. So local governments only get powers from the state constitutions. And just kind of recapping on something we've touched on a couple of times, local government in the state constitution then. So we're going to take a peek at that Michigan Constitution, and you can look to Article 7, that's the chapter article on local government. Township government, the township level, which in Michigan, the township, basically you're in a city, you're in a village, or you're in a township. It's one of the three in Michigan. In Florida, you are in city limits or you are in the county, out county, or there's different ways that that's referred to, but it's basically you're either in a city or a village, or you are in just county land where there is no municipal body other than the county government. So at any rate, township government would then in some respects be kind of like that gap filler that the in Florida, the county government provides. But anyway, so Article 7, Section 17, Article 7, Section 18, talking about the powers and immunities that are provided by state law. I smile because I'm realizing that it wasn't really until today that it hit me how inherently unconstitutional this part of the Michigan State Constitution is, and that the powers of township boards and the clerk, treasurer, trustee, supervisor. I was on one of these such boards when I was living up in Michigan. The legislative and administrative powers and duties are provided by law. So why did I smirk about that? Well, township government cannot simply have powers and immunities provided by law. They can't do that. I don't care what state you're in. You can't have a state constitution that just says, well, the legislature will tell us what powers our local government officials can do. Why? We have a Republican form of government. Let's really think about that. It's simple. Legislators have the power to make laws. We have a representative form of government where we retain the ultimate control and authority. We elect representatives. We don't elect people to be representatives who then turn around and create new representatives underneath them in some fashion. No, we elect representatives to do the job, the administrative functions of government. So legislators have the power to make laws and not to make more legislators. Couple of quick points, and then we're going to bring in our special guest who's really going to put all this into perspective for us. So city and village government in the Michigan Constitution, this is a little bit more realistic here. It talks about that the Michigan cities and villages have power to adopt resolutions and ordinances relating to its municipal concerns, municipal property, municipal government, of course, all subject to the Constitution and the law. So again, city and village government has power to adopt resolutions and ordinances relating to municipal concerns, municipal property, municipal government, but is subject to the Constitution and the law. And in the Florida State Constitution, we're going to look at Article 8, Section 2, and talking about municipal governments, that they have the power to conduct municipal government, perform municipal functions, and render municipal services. So again, what does that look like? Well, in Florida, the way they look at it is that municipalities have powers to conduct municipal government, perform municipal functions, and render municipal services, and exercise any power for municipal purposes. So this is where I wanted to have okay, sorry, I was looking at the Liberty Cause. The Liberty Cause, if you are still with us and can hear us okay, yes, Archangel, you would be able to ask a question on YouTube. I might have to pause on and figure out where the timing would best be to answer your question, but please fire away on any of today's topics. Okay, so yes, the Liberty Cause. Can you help us understand what some municipal government functions would be, municipal services, and Lori, you too as well. What are some that come to mind for you for municipal service or function?
Well, managing the roads and potentially the drainage in the area. On the spot question. You're making me think too hard. But I mean, it could be from that to the parks in the area, maintaining government property in a general sense.
Yep, and like the Liberty Cause says, water, sewer, fire services, exactly. And somebody else comments on here, trash pickup. So I do have a few more things we're going to touch on, but this is where, oh, and down here, of course, he points out to something else, hurricane cleanup and basic trash. Yes. So let's see here. So
just bring him in, he said.
What's that?
It's just bring him in, he said. Yep. Okay.
So speaking
of
which,
it's just you two, or did you want me to stay? Just throw me out when you don't want me.
First of all, let me see. Shoot, I'm gonna unshare our presentation here just a minute, and let's see. Okay, so all right.
He needs more lighting. You can hardly see his face. Do you have any light you can turn on or something?
Not really.
Oh.
I'm noticing a lot of trees that have no leaves. You must be in Michigan.
Yeah.
Yes, 2 feet of snow we had last week. So.
Yes, you had that. Ha 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 ha. Sorry. I mean, hey, I've had 2 hurricanes this season, so. All right, so. I wanted to. You kind of cheated on putting your name in there. So he calls himself on the screen here just Joel, but especially since we'll have people listening on the podcasting platforms later, I wanted to give you more of a proper introduction, full introduction. So can you throw out there your name for people and what are the what's your main profession? And then what have you been getting more known for in the last 2.5 years?
Well, Joel Ividson's my name. I live in Berry County, Michigan. My profession, I drive trucks so that I can afford to farm. But what I've been known more notably in the county for since 2018, I started a group called the Local Government Accountability Forum. And I guess one of my claims to fame here is that we started it before it was cool to do that. Obviously, 2020 introduced all kinds of dynamics when it came to holding government accountable, and we were on record doing it prior to that. So
I'm just playing around with our screen here. There we go. I wasn't trying to get rid of Lori, but I wanted to get your face a little bit bigger so people could see you. So
You can get rid of me.
So so you started a local accountability forum, and the first meeting that you had, I'm trying to remember. Was I at like the second meeting that you had?
Actually, you were at we had our protest in front of the courthouse in December of 20.
Yeah. But wasn't it around
the first time?
Wasn't it around?
No, that was actually some meetings after that. The very first meeting we had actually incorporated our local sheriff, Darleaf, and we had somewhere between 25 and 30 people at that meeting. And it's morphed to where we've had as many as 150, for example, at our candidates forum that we had back in March, I believe, of this spring, earlier this year.
There was something in June that you had candidates at too, right?
Yeah, in Waldorf. That was one of our regular monthly meetings that we had. That you happened to. We managed to nab you while you were in Michigan, and so it worked out very well.
Yeah, you filled up that whole room there, so great job on that. And
but do you remember what you said at the beginning of that meeting, Joel? You quoted somebody.
Oh,
my thunder, Lori. I was going to have him talk about that.
Oh, but sorry.
Yeah, so there's someone that I encourage everyone to watch, and now some things he gets a little wild on YouTube. He's no longer alive anymore. He's been dead for a number of years, but his name is Carl Miller, Carl with a C, and he really stresses the importance of knowing your rights. If you don't know your rights, you don't have rights. If you don't assert your rights in a timely manner, you don't have rights. So you must know them and you must assert them very quickly. Without that time, it's done and over with. After they've already locked you up in jail and thrown away the key, your chance of, it's done.
If you don't know your rights, you don't have them. Exactly. And it was the way you said it that day as you introduced me to speak at that event in June of this year, that it just clicked for me. It's so simple. It's as simple as that. And that's why I've been on the mission that I've been on since March of 2020, to try to tell people what's going on, explain the law, explain the Constitution, explain the functions and powers and responsibilities of government and what our rights are. Because if we don't know our rights, we don't have them. And conversely, I'm going to add this in there, and maybe this is something he would have said, but if you don't know the proper functions, powers, and thereby limits of government, then they don't have any limits. Because who's going to limit them if it's not us? They're not limiting themselves, clearly.
And something that was mentioned earlier, they asked what the functions were of local governments. For example, in our county, we have a road commission, amongst other things, a Parks and Rec board. But I would, my simple answer to that is, how would I put this? Far fewer than we think. Right.
Of the proper functions.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Of municipal governments. Yes. So, and Archangel, I see that you have a question. It's a little bit longer than I can just jump in to right at the second, so I'm not ignoring you. I see it's there, and Lori is going to help make sure that I do come back to it. So let's see about this. Lori, you can add yourself back on if you need to, right?
Yeah, go ahead and kick me off.
Okay, so I'm going to throw you off just so we can have room for the presentation part, and then jump right back on when you need to interrupt me or help me catch some questions that I'm skipping. Only because our screen is only so big. So let's see. How do I do this? Where's Lori? There's Lori. All right. So, and I'm going to have Joel talk, some specifics about some of these situations, but we are just going to finish talking about this. The reason why I brought him in when I did is because this seems simple and maybe boring, like the parts of the Constitution, and here I had landed on the Florida Constitution, and Joel's in Michigan, but still, regardless, we're talking about municipal functions, conducting municipal government, rendering municipal services. Municipal, if you look up the definition, isn't talking about the ability to control the people's every moves within your jurisdiction, or to have anything to do with the aesthetics of a community or anything like that. It's literally talking about essential services like infrastructure and whatnot. At any rate, just wanted to point out, you're going to have obviously a lot of state laws on what local governments are supposed to be doing or not doing. Unfortunately, state laws tend to go a little bit too much on the giving powers supposedly to local governments than to reminding themselves of how restrained they need to be. Anyway, this stuff will be shared with you in the presentations, especially for those of you who are listening on podcast later. Of course, on Thursday with the Constitution segment recap, you'll see the slideshow and you'll be able to reference the chapters of Florida statutes as well as Michigan statutes that apply in the context of what municipal and local governments are, supposed to be doing, etc. And so a municipality, say that word 3 times fast, Joel. A municipality's powers are to provide infrastructure, waterways, roadways, utilities, to protect our individual liberties, so that in my exercise of my rights, I'm not interfering with Joel's exercise of his rights. Question though, and this kind of relates to some of the questions we've seen in the chat today so far, and of course goes straight into some of these examples, real life examples we're going to be talking to you about. But municipal powers, can they supersede individual rights? So we're going to dive right into that. So what would I be talking about in individual rights in the context of dealing with municipal government? In case you haven't, let's say you've been lucky enough not to have an example right off the top of your head that you know of something impacting you or your family members or your neighbor. Well, here's some of the rights that we're talking about. What about the right to equal protection? Equal protection of the law, equal application of the law, the right to due process. That encompasses quite a few things. General rights to privacy from government, criminal trial rights, especially when it comes to ordinance violations that have criminal penalties, unenumerated rights. If you are new to me, you might be hearing that and going, well, what are those? Right. What are those? Those are things that we don't have to enumerate. We have all of those God-given rights that we didn't even list out in the Constitution because we don't have to list them out just to keep them. We already have them because God gave them to us, not the government. We have the right against bills of attainder, which we've talked about before. But with that due process of law, some key concepts. But basically, let's remember, you can't be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. So when we're talking about local governments, is every single public officer, every single public employee, are they all really required to ensure that all of those rights are protected? I mean, Joel, in your experience, I'm going to guess if you just had to base it off of your experience alone, what would you say? Do they think that that's their job to make sure that our rights are protected?
Well, it all originates before they even start their job when they take their oath of office. And the phrase, I do solemnly swear. Perhaps maybe some of these people need to look up the word solemnly in a dictionary to see what it is exactly that they're saying. But before any of them even engage in any kind of a duty in whatever capacity they're, they're serving officially, they have to take that. And the problem is it's become cliche. It's something you say, and okay, now it doesn't matter anymore. Now I am the code enforcement officer, and I am going to enforce the city code, whether it violates the Constitution or not. And they completely shirk the responsibility of making sure that what they are forcing is constitutional to begin with. As we know, we've got some cases that are going on here locally that that involve that, and I've even provided the city with Court of Appeals case text that states, this is wrong. They don't care. They just keep on pushing through.
So wait a second. Are you saying, it sounds like you're suggesting that the city officials oftentimes think that they need to follow any kind of local ordinance or regulation, and they don't have to consider if it's actually constitutional or not unless a court eventually tells them that in that specific case, hey, you can't do this. Is that what you would think that their perception of how things work is?
Well, I guess what I would say is it's one of the fundamental issues that society has taken on today, and it's not just with local government; it's everywhere you see it. If you watch Ben Shapiro, you've probably heard him say over and over again, "Facts don't care about your feelings." Well, today's generation doesn't care about facts, and that's transferred into local government as well. So you can throw these facts in their face until they're blue in the face, until you're blue in the face. Doesn't matter. They are not going to listen to you until someone of higher authority has said, hey, no, you can't do this, and you could potentially lose your job over it. And it's really sad when, even over simple issues, you essentially have to bend these people over a barrel before they will even take the slightest notion that perhaps they could be wrong on something.
So I love the way that you said that. So we're talking about, the famous quote that facts don't care about feelings. And unfortunately, the reality of today's generation, people, at least mainstream media and those with a lot of power, unfortunately, more and more of them just don't plain care about the facts. They don't care about the law. They don't care about the facts. They just want to be in their own little reality and do what they please. So at any rate, let's see. I just want to take go ahead.
I was going to say real quick, there are some advantages to that, though, when they are so out of touch with reality that I mean, you could tell them 2 + 2 = 4, and they say, no, it's purple. It's the nice thing about that is when you are surrounded by people like that, which in a large sense I was, let me go back to 2016. I took on our school system. I took them on prior to that, and trying to hold them accountable on a number of issues. And you're doing something right when they have nothing to come back or rebut you with. You're doing something right when they go out to your car and loosen the lug nuts on it, because that means that you've won. And I'm just a dumb truck driver. I crammed 4 years of high school into 5. I graduated with a 1.2 GPA. I farm. That's the extent of my education right there. And yet, even an individual like me, I can go in and say, no, I read this word for word. Obviously, none of you have. What gives? So it's really an incredible opportunity for virtually anyone to be able to get in, and it's a target-rich environment.
Right, and that's important that, a lot of people look at me and say, well, gosh, you're an attorney, Katherine, so obviously you can go and do these things, or you can feel comfortable saying these things, or calling out government officials. But what about me? I'm not an attorney. They're not going to take me seriously. I'm not going to have an impact. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to have you here today, because you are a truck driver and a farmer, and you don't have legal, a legal background, so to speak, going to law school or even college, right? Did you say you haven't been to college?
Correct.
Right.
I've taken a college class to understand bond defeasements, but I have never been to college, though.
So I really, I want that to sink in for people that, if you've been listening so far to the little bit so far this episode that we've had Joel talking, you might have assumed that he's an attorney or, he's high up in some sort of organization or government or whatever, that he has all this, this fancy, titles or, degrees or whatever behind him. He's the epitome of the average American, and he's showing you that every single person, if you're watching this and you live in the United States and you're a United States citizen, you can do everything that we're going to talk about today. You can do it, because he's not the only person that's done this. And he started doing this, just to be clear, he and I have been friends for a few years now, but he started doing what he was doing long before we met. So it's not like I encouraged him to get started, and so now he feels empowered, and he, because I have, gotten several good freedom fighting leaders off and running since 2020, but not this guy. You guys need to realize this is just another person, just like my friend 2A that we had on last week or the week before, talking about a lot of things, but especially in the context of Second Amendment rights and things like that. He's just somebody who, he's just an average person who owns his own business, who works hard, who has a family, and is sick and tired of government taking rights away that they have no right to do. They have no authority to trample those rights. So anyway, it might seem like a point that is belabored, but I can't underscore it enough. It's very important, because the biggest thing, what's that the quote about the way that the worst way that, or the biggest way that evil gets to keep going is when good men stand by and do nothing. Well, one of the Okay, and I totally paraphrased and mushed it around and chopped it up, but you guys know what I'm talking about. And the reason why I bring that up is so many people feel like, well, I don't really have the background, I don't really have the time, I don't really have the know-how, I'm not sure what it would take to make a change, to do something. And you don't have to go through college or go to law school or even take, a month-long course or go back and watch every single episode that I've put out this year to get started. You don't even need this episode, but this episode is geared to put you in the position to know, so that you feel comfortable that you can get out there and make some change and fight back, stand up for your own rights. All right, so your municipality is trampling your rights. Let's bring it to one of these examples. Now what? Well, some of the things you can do. Send them a proper cease and desist letter. Does it have to be from an attorney? No, you can represent yourself. You can protect your own liberties. You can send them a notice of proposed litigation. Here, I've researched this law. I've seen that I have a right to sue you as a government entity or government official under this law, and I will sue under this law unless you guys take corrective action and do X, Y, Z. Urgent, again, you don't have to have an attorney for any of these. Urgent filing of a lawsuit. So maybe you skip the giving of notice and you just have to file a lawsuit to protect your rights because they're about to do something that can't be undone. Maybe that's a route you need to take. Speaking at city council or city commissions, as we have them in Florida, meetings. Finding and joining with others that have been similarly harmed by their local governments. Issuing press releases and having a strategic social media campaign. If we talk to our friend Joe Moss, who's now an Ottawa County Commission elect, and will be leading the Ottawa County Commission board members into the next cycle, he'd be able to talk to us a lot about the different things that they were able to do before they were ever elected. I mean, they were literally just elected. They haven't taken office yet. So, let's look at what that really means then for, you don't have to be in office. You don't have to even be running for office. But if you can get out there and get a social media presence and really join with like-minded people and have an email list or just even a Facebook page or a website and really give information and say, hey, look, there's, the public health department here in our county is putting out XYZ. This is terrible. And just bring attention to it. You can create a firestorm that will lead to basically the PR pressures and making the county do something. And it could just be a handful of people working together to try to get those things done. We have some examples. My examples will come later, but I've taken on the city of Belding when I lived there as a resident. I took them on. Georgetown Township, that was a city or a township, a municipal government that I took on from the inside out. And the city of Ormond Beach, my current fun that I'm having now. And the city of Hastings, that's the example, several examples probably that we could bring up with our friend Joel. And then we'll have some, keep in mind that we do have constitutional grounds to legally fight back. You have constitutionally enshrined rights of specific rights to fight back. So, in fact, I'm just going to briefly say those so that Joel can have the floor and tell us about some of these great examples. First of all, keep in mind, all political power is inherent in the people. And I have, again, the slideshow will be shared with you on Thursday. So we'll have the citations, especially for those of you who are listening and not watching. I'm not going to go over all of the Florida and Michigan or U.S. constitutional provisions that I'm essentially quoting here, but you'll see those on Thursday. All political power is inherent in the people. We have basic rights to enjoy and defend life and property and possess and protect property. We have the rights to peaceably assemble, instruct our representatives, petition our government for redress of grievances. Courts shall be opened for every person for redress of any injury and shall be administered, and justice shall be administered without sale, denial, or delay. And the last few, access to public records and meetings is something enshrined, at least in some way, shape, or form, in virtually every state constitution. There's the elective recall, or the recall of elective officers that citizens can start and do. Of course, you have the right to free speech and to the press. And remembering, above all else, that the U.S. Constitution guarantees us that Republican form of government where we, the people, retain ultimate control and authority. So I'm just going to leave one of these screens up, and maybe I was going to make us a little bit bigger, but I'm not smart enough to do that. In fact, let me see if I can hide that screen and make you bigger. Maybe I can. There we go. All right. So take it away. Tell us some of those real life examples that you've been dealing with. Maybe start with the one I called you about yesterday and then throw some others in there.
Yeah, well, where you have to start, you have to take stock of yourself first. You have to figure out, okay, what is a hill to die on? And you can't say that figuratively. You have to mean that literally. I don't mean that in the sense that you go to City Hall and you plan on getting shot up or anything like that. But I mean, you have to figure out what in life is really worth taking a stand. And then once you have that figured out, at the beginning of the pandemic, one thing that I started doing, I read through the entire Michigan Public Health Code, and it was really daunting at first. But once I got started, there were some things that just make you go, what? For example, there is a provision that if for some reason the sheriff and the undersheriff are taken out of commission at the same time, let's say whether it's a shootout or a corruption scandal or anything, that there's a doctrine that could be put together that the health officer would take over the powers, authority, and duties of the local sheriff until the next election. And it's things like that. Once you realize how harebrained this legislation that we're living under actually is, what kind of authority That's one of the interesting things is very early on, when in reading the health code, we realized that there was no authority that the governor had. It was all in the local health departments. But you see the governor's executive actions when those didn't work, in part thanks to Katherine Henry taking that weapon out of her menagerie. Then they went to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and then they realized, oh, I guess it really is with the local health departments. And in some ways, I'm kind of grateful that our legislature is as stupid as it is, because they were getting ready. And there's even videos of Mike Shirkey, who was the Senate Majority Leader at the time, stating, I don't know why Governor Whitmer won't sign our legislation. It is word for word almost exactly what her executive orders are. Well, if Governor Whitmer was smart enough to sign
that thought, because it wasn't.
What's that?
Almost, I'm going to pause you just there because it wasn't almost word for word. They literally didn't even rewrite the terms or text of what her executive orders were. Senate Bill 858 on April 30th, the Republican-led House and Senate voted to codify over half of her executive orders as they were currently written, and they didn't even reprint the text. They just said Executive Order 2, Executive Order 17, Executive Order 15. They're all adopted and made into state law, and she didn't sign it. And she called them out, and she said it was unconstitutional the way they did that, which it actually was. So I'm glad she did that too.
Yeah. But it's incredible, if she would have signed that, how much worse of a predicament we'd be in now.
Uh-oh. Oh, what's going on here? Give me a second, guys. I'm not sure what's going on. It looks like he's still there.
He might have dropped.
All this,
there he is.
number of
I'll
these
jump
issues,
back up.
but because they don't even understand how it works, they're completely wasting their time. It's completely impotent. It's not effective. And if you could get all of that energy and put it behind something that is effective, then you could potentially make a big difference. And I think there's an argument to be said that thanks to Katherine Henry going over and scrutinizing some of my work that I did, we put together a petition that made its way all the way to Attorney General Dana Nessel's desk. And we even have some information that she worked illegally backwards through I can't remember what it's called, the Michigan Association of Prosecutors and so forth, to make sure that there was a bolo put out to every single prosecutor in the state of Michigan for our petition that we sent out. And it said, do not pay attention to it. The language in it is faulty. Long story short, the week after that, next thing you know, kids no longer have to wear masks in school anymore because the governor, very, very out of the ordinary, agreed to sign a Republican budget with virtually no negotiations, no line item vetoes, even when it stated in the budget itself that health departments would lose funding if they forced kids under the age of 18 to wear a mask in scholastic functions. And so, granted, I'm not going to get any press over that, and I'm okay with that. It was effective. That was the big thing. So that's just one of my biggest issues right now is with the people that surround me in the political atmosphere here in my county locally. There's so much misguided energy that it's all just being put to waste, and it's really quite a shame. So my goal has been to educate people in an effort so that they understand what their rights are when they show up. My wife does not look fondly on this day, but
wait. We're not gonna. I know what you're going to talk about, and we're not going to scare people away from talking. So let me have you talk about though. the case that is currently pending. And, you started to kind of talk about that basically, I forget how you said it, but basically it's, you got to pick your battles, right? You're not going to just
Yeah.
take on everything all the time because you're one person typically against a whole municipality, even if it's small. But there's someone that you know very well. And just briefly, I'm assuming he's okay with at least his first name being shared. Share his name and share, again, is he an attorney? What's his background? What does he do? And then what was the issue that started everything?
Yeah, a friend of mine, his name's Chuck Hertzler. And the thing that I love about Chuck is we put on our protest in December of 2020, and this was before protests were cool, mind you. And I called him up one day and I said, hey, the county told us that we're not allowed to have a protest. So how does next Thursday sound? And he goes, great. So this is the kind of guy he is. He's a Pepsi mechanic. He works on pop machines for a living. He's retired now. But anyway, one of the issues that we're having with the city of Hastings, there's a number of issues with the code enforcement officer just being very overbearing in general. And so there's any number of battles that we could have picked. But he had, I think, 5 political signs in his yard. City ordinance 90-971 for City of Hastings states that you may only have up to 4 wire-framed signs in your yard at any given time. Wire-frame signs are the only types of permissible signs. What's interesting, though, is they came after him for his 5 signs because he was 1 sign in excess in violation of the ordinance. So what does he do? He calls me up and goes, hey, what's going on here? So I do some looking into it. And I was like, well, hey, I found this appellate case, 4th Circuit Court of Appeals, I believe it was, that it was ruled unconstitutional. They cannot limit the number of signs. So he goes, great. So I can put 9 signs in my yard, right? Well, next thing you know, he has 18. But I did caution him. I said, the First Amendment, we've got to be careful with it. And in the sense that yes, I understand that we should be able to do whatever we please when it comes to freedom of expression, but I do think that it needs to be practiced with responsibility. So none of the signs were repetitive. And what's interesting is in that case, it's Arlington County Republican Party versus Arlington County. Arlington County had an ordinance in which only 2 signs could be permitted, or only up to 2 signs were permitted to be in anyone's property. And there were a number of interesting dynamics that particular case brought in. For example, what if you have a husband and wife who have different views politically? At that point in time, who gets to put the signs out? The husband, the wife? And so there were any given number of, there were probably 3 or 4 major arguments in that case. And a long story short, all the way up to the 4th Circuit, it wound up being, that decision was upheld. And so anyway, in spite of...
Let's pause for that in just a second, because regardless of what any stupid judge or justice says anywhere, even all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and I say this with the utmost respect, if they're not following the Constitution, I really don't care what their decisions or their precedent or their opinions say, because we have rights that regardless of what the government does, we still have those rights. God gave them to us, and we did not give those up in how we delegated power and authority in the Constitution. So you have your right to free speech, you have the right to use your own property, and those are things that still remain regardless of when we go through periods of a bad court decision here and there on any given topic. So just to keep that in mind for those of you, I know Joel knows that, but I wanted to make sure that those of you who might still be looking at court cases and precedent with so much reverence that you want to rely on it, just keep that in mind. Judges and justices are people too, and they are not given the ultimate control and authority in our country. It's a republic, so we still have the ultimate control and authority, and we still have those God-given liberties. But anyway, so yes, what Joel is saying though is correct, that there is case precedent out there that says specifically, hey, governments, local governments especially, you can't do this particular action. You can't limit the people and their free speech an expression in this way. So where though, so he, you know, the city of Hastings, right? It's the city of Hastings that he's battling this with.
Yep.
So they were telling him, hey, you can't do this. And he's like, hey, Joel, I can, right? And you're like, yes, you can. And he says, okay, then watch me. I will do this. And so he amps up his political presence in his yard. And they decided to pursue it at that point. So, and it was what one ticket or one court case that was filed? I don't remember the specifics on that.
Essentially, it's City of Hastings versus Charles Hertzler, and they are suing him for $50 because the city believes they have been so damaged that it is worth $50 for them to pay an attorney, I'm guessing somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $10,000 to represent them in a case against a retired on fixed income. His only income is Social Security. Individual who is just trying to propagate what he believes in his yard. And it's interesting because another statement that's made in that sign, or in that case, and several other cases in my research of it, that signs are virtually pure speech. So if you look at the First Amendment, free speech, shall not be abridged. You look at, was it Article 1, Section 2 of the Michigan Constitution, which I think further enshrines that right, further codifies it. What part of abridged, the word abridged means to shorten. What part of shall not be do you not understand? Anyway, it's the thing that I like about people like Chuck, is one, he knows to pick his battles. I wish we could fight every single battle, but unfortunately we can't. But he picked one thing and he stuck his guns to it. So it takes that type of conviction. You've got to be firm in it. And fortunately for him, I hope that I'm giving him the support that he's going to need to ultimately win this in the future. We actually have a lawyer retained now, Darren Wisely. Some people are listening may have heard the name. I believe he's part of the Hillsdale Republican Party, but he's going to come over here and represent the case in January. It was supposed to be in December, but something happened with the attorney's cat or something, some pet emergency. So they moved
with the prosecuting attorney's cat.
No, actually, it's a civil case. It's a civil infraction. So basically, it's a lawsuit where it's the city and their attorney versus Chuck and his attorney.
So they don't use the prosecuting attorney in those situations?
Nope. The prosecuting attorney can sit there and watch just like anyone else can, but our prosecuting attorney has absolutely no part, no role in this.
Okay.
Because it is not criminal. It is a civil. That's one thing that a lot of people don't understand is, you have criminal prosecutions and civil prosecutions. Civil is exactly that. It's civil. The city believes that it has been so damaged that it is entitled to $50 for the extra sign in his yard. Which is really something, if you put it into that perspective, it's not about safety. It's not about well-being. It's about $50. And that term civil just brings that all into
as far as the distinction between criminal and civil and it being a civil infraction in Michigan, the distinction there being, well, with a civil infraction, in theory, there's absolutely no jail time, though if depending on how corrupt the court system is you're dealing with, you might end up with being held in contempt, which might throw you in jail. I know a few, perhaps those who are still watching who have experienced that. But so even if it's a civil case, there is that element. But it's really no different, though, because in a civil case, it really should be between two private parties and private interests involved. But what we're dealing with here is a government entity trying to take away the rights of an individual person. So whether we're calling it a criminal case or a civil case, what it really means is that by calling it a civil infraction, it's not even a full civil case as a civil infraction in Michigan. It's like this third, little carve out of things where it doesn't have the full protections or procedures of a civil case, but it also doesn't have most of the protections guaranteed for criminal matters. And so it's basically their way to say, well, we're going to get you. And, you're not guaranteed counsel. You're not guaranteed all these things. Why? Because we won't throw you in jail over this. We're just going to, fine you till you're, not able to put food on the table and things like that. In this situation, it's a very, very small fine comparatively, but there have been definitely situations in Michigan and in every state across the country where you have a situation like this, and then they add fine after fine after fine after fine. It was there was a case in Florida here where this couple painted the fence of their property in, I forgot, the Liberty Cause is going to pipe up and say it, I'm sure, but there was a famous, I think it was a Vincent van Gogh, Starry Night or something like that, where they painted it on hired somebody to paint it a replica on their fence. And so it was an expression type of case. And those fines, I want to say, were already in the thousands of dollars by the time that it made it to court, because they were fining them like something like $100 every day that they left it up. So, sometimes it's something small, like one $50 charge. Sometimes, they're just going to keep tacking it on until you give up. And then what? In a lot of municipalities, if you have something like that and then you have no way to fight it and they end up taking you to court or doing whatever, they will try to add it on to your taxes. And then if you can't pay all your tax bill anymore because taxes aren't high enough, then guess what that means? Then they're going to use the procedures to try to auction off your property and you could lose your house. So, I mean, this really isn't just, about cases where people are trying to take a stand to fight against something that they could otherwise afford to pay. I mean, this is something where, average people can't afford to, have to pay all these things in the first place and shouldn't have to. So at any rate, cat or no cat, we're looking at January for the results of this case. Is that right? Is it the essentially the evidentiary hearing is what they've set it for, or what is it set for in January?
This will actually go before the judge, I believe, January 9th, and that will be the end of it, provided there are no more setbacks. But but like you said, it goes down to they know that you're not going to be able to afford this, and Chuck, there's no way he'd have paid for this. We've been able to come up with help from around, and that's what the focus is of the group that I started. It's protecting people's rights, but a lot of this is also really going to boil down to education. You look at the complete mess and disaster that the last election in Michigan, how that went. You're going to have to re-educate society in order to get judges in place that respect the law as it's written. Maybe I'm missing something just as a stupid truck driver, but it's spelled out so plainly and so clearly that seems like if I can understand that, like for example, the city attorney, in their response to the brief that we filed on behalf of Chuck, they quoted the dissenting opinion from the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals as the authority behind their entire argument. And I guarantee you that if we hadn't gone down the road of getting an actual attorney to represent that the judge that we have here in the county would have accepted that as the authority and, continued to down a process of deprivation of rights. That's unfortunately the sad situation where we're in right now.
Yeah, and this is something that, quite frankly, I want to keep sharing with you guys out there about what's happening in this case, because again, this is a small city in Michigan. It's not one of the big, Detroit, Grand Rapids, Lansing, Ann Arbor, any of those kinds. It's in Berry County, Michigan, and the city of Hastings. And this is about just the average person who had a few signs out in his yard to support the causes that he believed in or the candidates that he believed in. And for the city, it was all about control. They wanted to exert control, and even if they were proven wrong, it didn't matter. They were going to keep going full steam ahead on this. So, Joel, I need to kind of wrap up some of these concepts for people and let you know, make it not too long of an episode that people won't go back and watch anymore later. But again, you guys have a constitutional ground to legally fight back, and you don't need to be an attorney. So when I talked about having those cease and desist letters, notices of proposed litigation, maybe just skipping straight forward and urgently filing a lawsuit, speaking at city council meetings, joining with others and having your voice heard, utilizing social media and the mainstream media if they'll get involved, local town papers, even if it's a town paper, and I've had this experience, a local town paper that didn't quite want to cover the slant of the truth, they were still covering the story enough that, enough for the faces of people speaking at city council meetings were, those pictures were still on the front page of the paper enough that the issues were still being highlighted, that people knew that their fellow residents were still standing up and speaking out and trying to make a difference. And again, that's all before the 2020 stuff anyway. But cease and desist letters, keep in mind, guys, I'm not a Florida attorney. I grew up down here, but I, lived for 12 years down here as a child. But we just moved down here last year, and I'm not studying to take another bar exam anytime soon. I've already passed all the ones that I've taken with flying colors. I have more than enough to keep me busy. But I just did some searching on the legislature's website. I did some searching, literally some Google searching on cease and desist letters here in Florida when I just had to create my cease and desist letter to the city of Ormond Beach here for violating my rights with their supposed codes here. Notice of proposed litigation. Again, I'm not a Florida licensed attorney. I'm not someone who had, this isn't the bread and butter of my law practice and what I'm used to. No, I just did what Joel has done as, as a resident in an area. I just looked up the statutes that apply. And I was able to get an idea of what my rights are. Literally just comb through the chapters of statutes down here. In the city of Belding, when I was going through situations, I actually served in a volunteer position on a few different boards. I was on the Downtown Development Authority, or DDA. I was on the Planning Commission. My husband at various times was on the Zoning Board of Appeals in the city of Belding. And at any rate, so I had a situation where I was just speaking up at city council meetings because they were doing things illegally, and I just tried to educate them. I used my 3 minutes at that public podium, public comment time, to tell them, hey, here's the problem. Here's what the law says. Here's how you can fix it. Every single meeting I was going, because every single week it was something new. And quite frankly, in that community, it mostly wasn't the city council. It was the city manager. But they were letting her run rampant and do whatever she wanted, and violating the law and violating the Constitution and certainly violating people's rights. And I didn't even know most of the people whose rights were being violated. But I didn't like seeing it in black and white in front of me, and basically full admissions from the city manager about what she was doing. I mean, things you wouldn't believe. Filing a public records request. A woman named Kim Orlick, Joel, I don't know if I ever told you this, so let me know your thoughts on this, but there's a woman named Kim Orlick in Belding, Michigan. I don't know if she's still there, but she lived there when I lived there, and she was known for years for filing FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests, and trying to uncover things, and a lot about, the revenues of different fees and things with the local police department, and just all kinds. I don't remember a lot of the specifics, but she FOIA'd some of this information, that public records. And sometimes it would amount to, wow, she'd uncover something that was really bad that was going on that they shouldn't be doing. And sometimes it was like, well, that was a rabbit hole you went down for no particular purpose, but she still had the right to request the information. So when we had this new city manager come on board, Meg Mullendorf, wonderful gal. Anyway, she decided, well, her daddy is an attorney in the nearby city of Greenville, Michigan. She decided that she didn't like all this information being requested and then shared with people across the community in these Freedom of Information Act requests, these record requests. So she found out that this woman, Kim, had been involved in a civil case many, many years ago, and that there was a almost 10-year-old judgment against her in a civil case for owing $1,100 to, I think it was a credit card company or something. And now keep in mind, we don't have debtor's prison here, right? There was an almost 10-year-old case where she owed money and hadn't paid. And at some point, somehow in there, there was a warrant for her for not answering a question for the creditor to be able to collect from her. Okay, this is totally like a debtor's prison type of scenario. So it was just shy of 10 years. The reason why I'm hammering on that is at 10 years, a civil judgment against you in Michigan disappears unless it is specifically renewed by the court. So you have this judgment that was not being renewed. You had this police department way up at the bridge. Now, if you're from Michigan, we were living down here, and they were talking about way up here, okay, at the bridge. They brought this woman all the way up there because this bench warrant was out for her related to this $1,100 debt that she owed on an old credit card for a case that was 10 years old. And get this, the city manager and the chief of police who worked for her, they called the chief of police up there and said, hey, we got this person, we picked her up, we saw you have this warrant out for her, so come and get her. And the police department up there said, no way, we're not coming to get her. They're not even going to renew this judgment. The whole case is being dismissed in a week or two, so no. So what did the city manager do? She said to the chief of police in Belding back then, and I believe it's 2014, she said, well, let's go pick her up anyway and drive her the whatever it is, 7 hours all the way up there ourselves. So she gets in the cop car and she rides along with the chief of police, and she makes sure and watches that they go and pull this woman out of her house in the middle of the night. She doesn't get to take her medications. She's not told what she's being arrested for. She doesn't get to take any necessities or money or anything, any resources with her. And they literally drive her all the way up to the bridge in Michigan, the Mackinac Bridge. And then when they get there and the local police department says, we're not taking her, the jail won't book her. They say, no, we are not taking custody of this woman. What do? The Belding police drop her off there and don't even bring her back home, leaving her stranded in winter in Michigan with no money, none of her medications, and no way to get back home.
Kidnapping.
Doesn't that sound insane? This is just because a woman was making records requests and they didn't want stuff uncovered. This is in a small town of 5,000 people.
Yeah, it's something that, unfortunately you're going to have, and if I can say this and then I can let you get going, but one of the people that I really enjoy researching is what's his name? I spoke about him at the forum that you were at, Katherine. He's a civil rights individual, and he was in the civil rights game 7 years before Martin Luther. Martin Luther, in a lot of ways, Martin Luther King Jr. took a lot of credit for what this individual had actually done. And I can't remember his name, but he was someone who was willing to put the Constitution to the test. How many people today are willing to sacrifice themselves in order to protect the next generation from evil. You know, we hear over and over again about how, oh, if there's going to be any harm, let it be in my day so that my kids don't have to endure it. It's already out there. We're setting by, and just like the quote you were mentioning earlier is from Edmund Burke, it's the only thing that needs to, evil triumphs when good men do nothing. That's the paraphrase of it. Edmund Burke was kind of a visionary in a lot of ways, but he was an English parliamentarian. And what's interesting is he had a very interesting relationship with Thomas Paine. And before the revolution even happened, Edmund Burke was telling the Parliament in England, you guys can't keep doing this. You can't keep doing this. They're going to get to a point. They're going to revolt against us, and we're going to lose America. Over and over and over, he said that. It sounded like a broken record. And you know that's where he's known as the father of conservatism. And that's where that mentality, that's where that thought process began. He was an individual who, a lot of ways, I emulate, because he believed that you don't go out there and you don't become this obstinate, individual. You don't just go out there and raise Cain just for the sake of raising Cain. You need to. There's proper channels in which you do things. But he kept telling the English Parliament over and over again, if you guys don't back off, these people are going to revolt. And guess what? They revolted, and here we are today. Anyway, Shuttlesworth, Reverend Shuttlesworth is the gentleman's name.
Oh, the Shuttlesworth case. Yes. Yes.
And one of the things that I believe that this is I'm attributing this to him. I'm pretty sure he said this, but when something negative happens that seems to be all encompassing, it's at that point when the strong, no matter how few they will be, will shine. And that's when everything around us gets darker and darker and darker, you don't have to be that bright to stick out. And that's one of the things I like using. I'm okay with being self-deprecating against that's fine. Because the one thing that we have to offer people, as long as we've done our research, that no one else has, that's the truth. And so we have to get that out there effectively. We have to educate our neighbors, our friends, our family. And then eventually, if push does come to shove, we get to a point where, like in America, we do say, all right, enough is enough. And we had that in Berry County when we had, my guess is somewhere around 500 people show up to a Board of Health meeting. We had that just prior to that. There were 300 people that showed up to a Board of Commissioners meeting when it came down to the health officer. Talking about due process. These kids were guilty of not having COVID. That's why they weren't allowed to play sports. Well, you came into contact with so-and-so that doesn't have COVID, but he was in contact with so-and-so. Where's the due process in that? These kids never had COVID in the first place, but yet they weren't able to be part of their championship games. They weren't able to play with with their friends in sports and whatnot. And we even had some cases that in the circuit courts in Michigan where that was ruled a deprivation of rights. There was no due process. So, and I'm a Christian. I have no problem. I say that unashamedly. I guess the way I'm going to leave it with you is Psalm 82, verse 3. And who are we out there to defend? You see so many people who seem to be apologists for President Trump, for apologists for President Biden, whatever side of the political spectrum, apologists for Rand Paul, where they have to, they have staff that can handle themselves. But biblically, what are we supposed to do? Defend the poor and the fatherless, do justice to the afflicted and the needy. Those are the people that we need to stick up for. And if we spent more time sticking up for the people that needed it, like my friend Chuck Hertzler, he's on a fixed income and he's retired. If we stuck up for that, if we stuck up for the people that really needed it, and we quit putting all of this effort into debating national politics, which is going to accomplish absolutely zero impact on anything, it'd be amazing how powerful that we are. So.
It is. It would be amazing. In fact, it's kind of sad in some respects of the things that I think about that I could have been doing personally if I just had a little bit more resources. So, for example, you asked about 10 minutes ago, how many people are really out there that are willing to sacrifice for the community, for the future generations, for their kids to have freedom. And I was over here going, yeah, I am. Obviously, what happened to me in Allegan County on Election Day 2020, getting the crap beat out of me by 3 grown men deputies who forgot that they actually took an oath to defend the U.S. Constitution and the state Constitution, telling me that it wasn't their job to have to think about what the law says, when I was literally there as an attorney, there to fight for somebody else's rights, there as an attorney to talk with them. And all I did was, they kept telling me I had to leave publicly accessible public property during open hours, that they literally just kept saying to me, it's not my job to have to know about the law, to talk about the law. I said, just give me 5 minutes to explain to you why you can't make this person leave here. I'll share with you the law. I'll share with you the Constitution. We'll talk about it. And they just said, well, no, now you need to leave, or we're going to start with arresting you. We're going to take your kid to CPS. We're going to take your car and tow it. We're going to arrest you. We're going to deny your freedoms. And guess what? I mean, I eventually won. It took almost 2 years. It wasn't until this summer that my case was finally dismissed. I had to file multiple levels of appeals and briefs and things. And it cost me, I don't remember the exact amount, but over $5,500 out of pocket. That's not paying to attorneys. That's court costs and filing fees and everything else. And we're on a bit of a fixed income, so to speak. My husband is a machinist. He doesn't, he's not some $100,000 a year job kind of guy. He is a typical American hardworking guy, just like you, Joel, just like Chuck, before becoming retired and going to that stage of life. But we've raised 4 kids. We're still raising kids, and we just simply don't have the funds to do that. But it was my own freedom at stake, and it was a case that will have impact on others. How can I expect others to stand up and fight for freedom if I'm not willing to do it myself? But hey, it's Giving Tuesday. So give to people that are in Chuck's shoes, who don't have help covering costs for attorney's fees. Consider donating on my page, restorefreedomkh.com. You can scroll to different parts. You can help donate to us personally, so we can, keep eating and going to the doctor when we need to, and things like that, and having gas to go and pick up groceries. While we're doing this fight for freedom, you can donate specifically to keeping this weekly show going, to keeping our weekly newsletter going, our Constitution segment recaps. But there's a spot on there to donate specifically to hold those Allegan County officials responsible. I have people writing me letters and sending me emails and things like that, telling me, you need to start filing that lawsuit against all of those Allegan County officials, the prosecuting attorneys. There were 5 involved. The 3 sheriff's deputies, the sheriff himself, who was involved that very day. Yes, I spoke with him on the phone. In fact, Darleaf of your county spoke with him on the phone before they even beat the crap out of me and arrested me that day. There's the judges that were involved, at least 2 in the district court and at least 1 in the circuit court there in Allegan County, which is near Berry County. And here's the thing, there's people demanding to me, like, hey, you have to fight this, take this case, bring them, take them to the cleaners, basically, set that precedent, in many senses of the word, but, lead by example so that other officials will then know they can't do this to people. Here's the thing, guys. I'm already $5,500 or more in the hole, and I've only had like $2,700 in donations for that specific thing in the last two and a half years, or whatever it's been, 2 years. So if people want me to continue fighting that fight, help me at least cover the expenses I've already been out of pocket in the case before expecting me to incur additional court costs and filing fees and everything else. Transcripts are a lot of money. Getting records and documents and, filing motions, it does. It costs money. So if you want me to continue to be able to fight the fight in that sense, then please help and do some funding with that. But anyway, whether it's me, it's Giving Tuesday, guys. So whether you're helping $5, $10, $100, $1,000, whatever it is, to somebody like me or somebody like Chuck, who is just, again, an average American, just doing his thing on his own property, quietly speaking his own mind, when the city comes along and thinks that they get to control his every move, find somebody that you can support and you can, rally the forces around them, because we have to do this together. I mean, Joel's here talking about this today because not so much direct impact to him or his, immediate family. He's been doing this work because he's been seeing person after person in his community, not just even his close circle of friends, but people in his community, business owners and restaurant owners and you name it, that have been impacted. And Joel said, enough, let's do something. Let's join forces with those other residents in our community or statewide or whatever, and let's get something done. So at any rate, Joel, it's been a pleasure having you on. I will let you go so I can round out our program today. I look forward to hearing from you soon about how the case is going. And don't forget, please don't forget, if you ever want me to come back and speak on issues, I would be glad to do that. I do still have friends and family in Michigan, and I will continue the freedom fight there. So maybe I'll do a freedom fighting tour and stop in a bunch of cities.
We may pay you to come up here and speak, but it'll be in front of the Fifth Circuit Court. So,
well, there might be that too. So, anyway, even if it's paying some gas money and a Motel 6 or whatever it is along the way, hey, I'm cheap in that sense to get me up there to speak and teach people about the Constitution. So just keep that in mind, okay?
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for being on. It's been great having you.
Yes.
All right, guys. So let's see. I'm going to throw Lori in here with me too. And I'm going to switch. I was showing you guys, again, some of those pictures and images of average people filling the rooms in their local township board meetings or city council meetings, trying to, let their government know this is not okay. Whatever you're doing right in this moment, what we're here to talk about, this is not okay. So again, you can do all these things. Cease and desist letters, notice, give them a notice that you're proposing filing litigation against them. File a lawsuit if you need to. If you need examples of what these look like, we didn't end up having time to talk about much of what the city of Belding, what I went through with them, or what I was doing from the inside out with Georgetown Township. Or my current fight with the city of Ormond Beach. Maybe we'll have continuing discussions on some of those next week. Who knows? We'll see. But keep in mind, though, that our freedom fighting tools will be available to you on Friday, which will, of course, include some real life tangible examples of documents that you can use. If you're in Florida, if you're in Michigan, heck, if you're anywhere else in the country, it's at least a starting point so that okay, so what does a notice of proposed litigation look like? Or what does a response to the city look like when they're saying they're going to come after you and bring you to court over supposed code violations? What are some of the arguments that you can come up with? What are some of the things that you can use? What are some of the tools that you can use to defend your own rights? That's the very stuff, the actual, where the rubber hits the road. That's the exact stuff that I want to provide to you and give you those real examples of. So, Lori, I am hearing some sort of weird, like if there's paper on your mic or something, there's some sort of weird.
Oh, I'm holding the notes because you asked me to take notes of questions. Okay. I wonder if you wanted to kind of touch on them maybe this time.
Give me just a second here. So I'm going to quick roll the rest of these through, otherwise I'll forget.
Sure.
So again, hammer on these rights, but these are just, again, we have unenumerated rights. We have many more than what are just written down in the U.S. or state constitutions. But if you're looking for a specific authority to remind governments, hey, you can't do anything to me because of this, then at least there's something to point to. That's going to be in the presentation or the PowerPoint that we'll share with you again with the Constitution segment recap on Thursday this week. But all of those rights that we talked about earlier, again, these are just some examples. There are many more, but these are just some examples of the U.S., Michigan, and Florida constitutions that we have in there for you. Which brings us back to our question of the week on our true or false question. There are several options that exist to fight back when local governments trample your rights, true or false. And there's still time to go and participate and answer this simple true or false question on Twitter, Telegram, LinkedIn, Truth Social, YouTube, or our website, restorefreedomkh.com. You can go to the updates tab or just type in restorefreedomkh.com/updates. Again, the answer here should be obvious by now. If you've been listening to any or even part of our show today, the answer is true. Although many are afraid to stand up to local governments, there are several effective ways that you, yes, you, can fight back when your rights are trampled. Cease and desist letters, notices of proposed litigation, speaking at city council or city commission meetings, etc. Many more. Again, we just simply ran out of time to try to give you more information on that. And one last thing that I will share with you before we go and answer the specific questions that were posed throughout the show that we didn't get to yet. If you do want more information on any of these topics, I mean, of course, it sounds like we might have to make a next week's episode tie into these and expand a little bit more and give you a little bit more of those concrete examples, so you know that whatever you're going through and challenges with your municipal government, we've been there. We know people that have been there. We know how to fight back, and it's not something where it's a multi-million-dollar law firm or corporation that's leading the charge. It's average, everyday Americans that are just standing up and saying, enough! Follow the damn Constitution. Follow the law. Do your job as a government official. That's what it's about. So again, for more information, Wednesday's Way to Get Involved challenge will be shared with you tomorrow on Wednesday. Our Thursday Constitution segment recap, which is that 10-minute video. Hopefully there's some weeks where I just can't cram it all into the 10 minutes, even if I'm talking like the Micro Machines guy from when I was a child. But that 10-minute recap video will be shared on all the social media platforms. And then our Freedom Fighting Tools on Friday. Of course, Saturday, you're going to have a great video from Rachel in some way to either purchase the Restore Freedom gear that we have, like our decals or our car magnets, or she might be highlighting this week a way that you can support us financially, because, of course, this being Giving Tuesday and there was Small Business Saturday this last week, we'll probably have one of those videos for you along those lines on Saturday. And we'll round out the week as we always do with our biblical insight on Sunday before jumping into the next topic, or perhaps a continuing version of this topic next week on Monday for our preview. And of course, Tuesday again, live at noon Eastern Standard Time for the next full episode of Restore Freedom Weekly, episode 49. We had some questions, one on Facebook from Beth. How do we donate? If you're specifically wanting to donate, Lori responded here with the restorefreedomkh.com/support. You can go there. You can go straight to donate, though, if you go to restorefreedomkh.com/donate. It'll take you right to just the donation page. Otherwise, you click this one that she has, that we have up here on the screen, and it's just one more click. You see donate is, I think, the second option there. Or you can just go to our website and you'll see support, and there's a little top, the top options, and there's a little caret. You select down and there's donate. You can just type in donate into the search bar of our website as well, but restorefreedomkh.com, that's the place that you can find all kinds of information. Trust me, I will put even more out there, and it is my goal to get as much as I possibly can from all our prior versions of our websites when we had a lot more people helping in the background on those things. But hopefully I'll have even more of that available and searchable, search-friendly for you by the end of 2022. But in the meantime, there's still ways that you can continue to donate. And the more you donate now, the more that I might be able to pay to automate some of the processes that we're doing so I can free up my time to get the rest of the documents and information and resources on the website for you. Or shoot, I can even get back into writing some legal briefs and fighting the fight in the courtroom or in whatever other way God leads me to. So please keep that in mind. Literally every dollar helps. So Lori, you have some questions. Let me...
Yeah, but before we move on, our window decals and those magnets sure make great stocking stuffers.
They sure do. They sure do. Okay, so
I lost some of the things, but in the beginning, John had asked what you do when city says your FOIA is going to cost $1,000.
okay, so what to do if a city wants to hide stuff and says your records request to basically uncover that information will be over $1,000. It really, the specifics there will depend. For example, one thing that you could do, we talked about, maybe you're going to join with other people, depending on how complicated it is. First of all, streamline your request as much as possible so that you're getting exactly what you need, and maybe having that net cast just a little bit more than what you know you need, just to make sure you're catching all of the aspects you're looking for. But try not to make sure that net is cast too wide that it's going to be ineffective anyway with the documents you're going to obtain. Because if it's $1,000 of a records request, in theory, that means you're going to get many, many, many pages of documents to have to comb through. So if you, you might want to also, if it's just a complicated situation, or it's just there's multiple pieces and you need all of that, team up with other people to have this person ask for this part and this person ask for that part. And don't think it doesn't work, because it does. I've been there. I've been involved in situations where it was a team effort to get information through records requests or FOIA requests, and that was often a way that it was handled. At any rate, let's see. What is something else I was going to say about that? As far as if they're, not making it a reasonable fee, depending on what state you live in, there might be laws about when you make a records request and the city wants to deny it, or they want to charge, an exorbitant dollar amount, you might be able to challenge that in court to say that, hey, this is not a reasonable fee, and I'm entitled to get these records. They're public records. Look, I've even offered to do this, this, and this, or whatever, and they're not telling me a way that would make it a more feasible, dollar amount. So, for example, if they want to charge you all that money because they want to give it to you in paper, perhaps you could, in writing, clarify that your request can be satisfied by providing all the documents on a thumb drive, or by sending an email or a zip file or something like that. That would make it, so that they don't have the costs of printing or photocopying, things like that. So again, it really depends on the situation involved to know what kinds of arguments you might have, if you need to bring it to court, if you need to bring it to some neighbors or friends to split up the request, if you just need to streamline your records request, or perhaps go to media, go to the social media. What is it that you're trying to ask? Get enough people. And in the city of Belding, that's only 5,000 people, and the paper that was covering it, the Greenville Daily News, trust me, the middle of freaking nowhere in Michigan, Montcalm and Ionia counties in Michigan. It's something that we were able to, it started with me reading a FOIA request. Someone was concerned about something the city manager, the brand new city manager, had said or done. It led to him filing a records request, a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request. And what he got back was shocking. And he brought it to me as someone who he knew just through the Chamber of Commerce and in the business community, knowing that I was an attorney, but mostly at the time handling a lot of day-to-day stuff. I handled divorces and custody and landlord-tenant and bankruptcies. And actually, at the time he brought it to me, I was on maternity leave because Emma had just been born. at any rate, because I was nursing a lot and sitting in a rocking chair with my little girl, I was reading. As I was nursing, I was reading through these FOIA requests, and I was just dumbfounded at what I saw that this city manager had been doing in prior communities before she got to ours. And then it led to me then reading the city city council meeting packets and the agendas and the documents that go along with that were on the website, or it might have been at the time we had to tell the city clerk that we wanted to be on an email recipient list of getting those agendas ahead of time. But reading them and going, oh my gosh, look at what's happening. It was literally there for anybody to see. So, I could have picked any one of those issues. I mean, let's think of a case where they hauled that woman, poor Kim, all the way up to the bridge, hours and hours away, dumped her off in the middle of the night to a law enforcement agency who said, duh, you already called us. We told you we're not going to take this woman into custody. It's over a civil case of a old credit card bill for $1,100 that she still doesn't have the ability to pay. So what drugs are you on? And yet they did it and left her stranded with no medications, no money, and no way home. So, it could be as simple as something like that you're basing your records request on. And whatever it is, it could be as shocking as that. It could be much less, shocking or more benign. Regardless, if you have an issue that you feel impassioned about, share it on social media. Keep it short, keep it sweet, and ask people to join in your request, or tell people, hey, they're not sharing this, or this is what they're doing. This is, help, call city council, email them, do whatever. You can make an impact even in that sense to get the ball rolling and get them to give you that information. All right, so hopefully that's enough of an answer. I have to scroll way far up and down in the comment chain because they're all showing up in the same spot. But even those sexy dating messages that Lori was able to delete on the public side, we unfortunately still have to see them on our side. So, and somebody asked earlier,
Archangel.
No, the difference with a charter township versus a city. Sorry. A regular township versus a charter township in Michigan. You can look at Chapter 41 and Chapter 42 of the state statutes in Michigan if you want to see what the specifics are. But basically, it's nothing. If you have your own charter, your own local constitution for your township in Michigan, then the laws of Chapter 42 apply to you. If your township is a township, but not a city, but a township, but it hasn't adopted its own constitution or charter, then Chapter 41 actually acts as the charter for your township. And so Chapter 41, in many respects, still applies to charter townships. It's just Chapter 42 also applies to charter townships. So at any rate, there's really not any difference in terms of the things that we were talking about today. So lots of fun. I know things that I know off the top of my head that people are like, why do you know that? Okay, so I'm trying to find, so it was Archangel. Is that the one you were going to?
Yeah, and the 9th Amendment.
Okay, so the question was, the framers said we have a right to enter, the framers said in the Declaration of Independence here that we have the right to alter or abolish the government. And the 9th Amendment says that we have unenumerated retained rights, that we have rights that aren't listed out, but we get to keep them anyway because God gave them to us. Can we construe a 9th Amendment I'm going to try to wrap my brain around this and say it out loud at the same time. The question is, can we construe a 9th Amendment unenumerated right not to be regulated by agencies? Oh, I'm not sure that that's really a question. I think it's more rhetorical because I think the insinuation here is all of our rights are being attempted to be regulated in some way because there are so many freaking agencies out there at all different levels and different branches of government that really the government has its hands on us and controlling our every move, and that all these unenumerated rights, as well as the enumerated rights, are being trampled upon repeatedly anyway.
I think he is feeling like, well, we should be able to say, hey, I got the 9th Amendment, leave us alone. And that's where, yes, basically the answer is yes, but you wouldn't just do that. They're, taking in on the other steps of, whether it's a cease and desist or whatnot.
Yes, and you guys will see that in at least a few of the things that I have filed on behalf of myself or on behalf of unofficially on behalf of the 10 million people in the state of Michigan, when I was fighting against the governor's executive orders in Michigan in 2020, I think almost every single brief that I filed said something about our unenumerated rights and the 9th Amendment. It also talked about in the Michigan Constitution, Article 1, Section 23, that's the unenumerated rights. And I want to say in Florida, it is Article 1, Section 1, Article 1, Section 1 in the Florida State Constitution. It doesn't talk about unenumerated. It's saying that the enunciation herein of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or impair others retained by the people. It's the unenumerated rights clause. It's just written slightly differently than what we see in the 9th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution or Article 1, Section 23 of the Michigan Constitution. So, yes,
I did want to kind of add that I think people are like, well, that's not my story. So, like when you were arrested or, with these other cases, in each one of the things you share, you can pluck stuff out and be able to apply it to your situation. So just because the story isn't exactly the same doesn't mean there isn't going to be fruitful information.
Exactly. So think about how I do the episodes here. In the last several, I've been starting with the same kinds of concepts. We get our rights from God, not the government. The government has no rights. In fact, the government only has the powers which we give to it, specifically through delegations of power in the Constitution, in the state or federal Constitution. Some of those basic concepts. There's things that apply in many, 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 if not almost all, situations all across the board. That's the starting point. So where do I say those things, or how, you might be thinking, well, how would I say that in the context of my case? Or, I have a local ordinance I'm fighting over here, or a state law over here, or this, government official over here. Think about it this way. Take a look at the legal briefs that I have shared online and look at the table of contents. That's the starting point. And then oftentimes just reading through, really, I know it's a lot of words, guys, it's a lot of pages, but I'm sharing them with you for a reason. And even if you just read the introduction to the different sections, you're going to see some really great stuff jump out at you that you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I'll print them out, grab a highlighter and read them. And you'll realize, oh, I could totally use that for this other situation. Oh my gosh, this applies here too. Wow. I try to write things in a way that, the judge or justice or whomever it is involved in that case, it can sink in and they can go, oh, yeah, yes. And that they realize it applies in various other situations. Other times, if you guys look at the cease and desist and notice of proposed litigation that I just served upon my own city, the city of Ormond Beach, very recently, just less than a month ago, when they were trying to take some action against me because they don't know how to read the law or the Constitution. There's one point where I'm pointing out how absurd, well, there's a few points where I was pointing out how absurd the local development code is, like, the ordinances relating to land use and development and blah, 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 right? Can you put pavers down in your yard? Can you put up a fence? Can you have, storage on your property, a container or a shed or anything like that? What are the rules and can they regulate all that? And how can they regulate all that? Well, at any rate, I started pointing out some of the examples of how really stupid it was. So I didn't write it just in a way that's, hey, this is for all rights, or this. I'm literally saying, okay, the way this is written, let's say you want to pick the weeds in your yard. You want to pull weeds in your yard. This says you have to get a permit first. Let's say you want to mow your grass. This says you actually have to submit a full master plan, basically, whatever it's called. I can't think of, but it's like with an engineer that designs and does all the plan for your, that's literally what the stupid code says. If you want to use your property for any purpose, if you want to pick your nose in your own backyard, you need to get a full, workup of legal documents and get a permit and get a development order from the city of Ormond Beach. That's how the code reads right now. If you looked at your own code, or especially if you're here in Ormond Beach and you looked at that and you're like, well, that's what I was thinking it said, but I didn't want to trust myself it seems so stupid that it couldn't possibly say that. Yes, because they're that stupid. The people that put that into place didn't read it. They trusted the municipal corporation that they hired to put it all together and to be the ones that would judge to tell them if it's all constitutional. And then they all just voted on it blindly. They didn't read it for themselves. They didn't stop and think, wait a minute, don't people have the right to use their own property? So at any rate, Lori's point was that all the documents that I have on there so far, and those that I will continue to share as I get more and more time to add things and continue in fighting in different ways and file new cases and things, that even if it's something that you don't think applies to you, I mean, my arrest on election day in Allegan County, Michigan, how could that possibly have anything to do with you fighting, about a sign ordinance that they're trying to give you a citation or a violation for if you're in South Florida? How could that have anything? I guarantee you there's a ton in those briefs that I wrote online that you can read and understand and use in your own fight for freedom. Okay, so good. I did answer the question. Because, I get worried about that. Then was that it? Because I think I had answered all the other questions, Lori, or were there any questions we missed? Oh. Shoot. If any of you can hear me, I'm not sure if I'm locked up right now or Lori is locked up. So if you are listening on YouTube or Facebook or any of the other places and you can shoot a comment on there, please let me know if you could still hear me so I can close out our episode today. So I know that it's Lori that's frozen and not me. Otherwise, I'm doing all the rest of this in vain. So I'm just going to give it a second to see. Okay, Lori can hear me. All right, so I don't know what's happening here. I don't know what the technology is doing. On my screen, all I see is Lori's frozen. I thought she was just listening very intently, but she hasn't blinked in about 5 minutes now. So I'm pretty sure it means her screen's frozen. At any rate, I do want to just round out today, again, reminding you to check in our resources and our posts that we will have throughout the rest of the week, and probably continuing topics on into next week. Do remember that it is Giving Tuesday, and it was just Small Business Saturday. And listen, guys, I took my small business and devoted it and started giving to you all to devote all of my time and my energy and my resources into the fight for freedom, so that we together can restore freedom. So please consider us in Giving Tuesday, whether it's $2, whether it's $20, whether it's $2,000. We need your help. We can't keep going and doing the things we're doing without having that help from you. So thank you so much for those of you who have donated, who have continued to donate throughout the freedom fighting journey that I've been on. But we need all of you. And even if you are someone who only occasionally pops into my episodes or occasionally checks in on, some posts or resources that I have for you, even just $5 or $10 would help. Please spread the word about the work that we are trying to do, because if we can team up together and do this, I would love to be able to team up with other freedom fighting organizations and people like the Constitutional Law Group. That is Rick Martin, who has been joining us in the comments or the chat today on YouTube. We have people like those that are leaders now in local government in Ottawa Impact in Ottawa County, Michigan. those that are, the Garrett Soldanos or Matt DePernos of the world, those are Michigan leaders, of course, or anywhere else. I want us to join in and join forces and really take back our government, state, local, national. But it's got to start state and local. Quite frankly, that's where it's at. So please help us to do our job in that sense. But hey, we got some people that, sorry, I'm just trying to double check that I didn't, okay, so somebody says that they would rather send money directly, snail mail, YouTube, take some. And by all means, if you want to send us money in the mail, if you go to our website, it'll show that address. It's P.O. Box 333. That is my favorite number. P.O. Box 333, Ormond Beach, Ormond Beach, Florida, 32175. That is the mailing address, but it is on the website, so you can go to the website. It'll tell you how you can snail mail us some money as well. It was also great to see that we're making an impact. So thank you for those of you who let us know when we were able to give information to you that you needed them. Okay, so again, thank you so much. Somebody else who's Cheryl is my favorite number. So hey, I was born on July 3rd. What can I say? So again, it's been a pleasure to have all of you joining us. Please make sure to hit that like, share, subscribe, follow button, whatever social media platform you're catching us on, whether you're just on a podcasting platform later on. Please make sure to share and like those episodes as well. The downloads, all of it helps. It lets us know that our message is out there and making a difference. So please consider in sharing in those non-financial ways as well. Ian, I'm so sorry. I was literally just about to say goodbye. And Ian on YouTube says, I guess my question isn't important. Quite frankly, Ian, I don't see anywhere where I had any other comments or questions from you at all. Okay. So you're asking for help with a speeding ticket. And I'm assuming Van Buren County. I don't know off the top of my head an attorney that it would be good and in that area and taking those kinds of cases. Here, quite frankly, here's the problem, guys. I get asked questions all the time about attorneys that are able to take certain cases. There were only ever a few that I felt like, okay, here's an attorney that I could refer people to for this kind of case or that kind of case. And as the years have gone on, especially as COVID hit, and we really saw the true colors of a lot of attorneys, I am not left with attorneys that I can refer you to. That's just the unfortunate side effect. I literally don't have resources. If I had a list of attorneys that I felt comfortable referring people to that could handle different kinds of cases, I would throw them on my website. I'd have them up there, their full contact information, the kinds of cases they take, etc. I just don't personally feel comfortable saying that any one in particular attorney can handle any kind of particular case and truly do the Constitution justice and do you justice. It doesn't mean that every single attorney out there is bad. It's just that's where the state of things are as far as me being able to refer. So, yes. Good lawyers are really hard to find in Michigan and in other states. So it's just an unfortunate aspect of things. But, that's why if you heard me at the very beginning or towards the beginning, I was telling you my whole job, my whole purpose of doing these episodes of spending hours and hours and hours getting things prepared and getting resources out to you and writing the website and doing everything that I am. My whole job, my whole purpose in that is to enable you to represent yourself, to empower you to fight for your own freedom so you don't have to depend on attorneys and judges to finally do the right thing and to make sure that your rights are protected. That is literally their job, but they're not doing it. And far too many attorneys forget the Constitution and say, oh no, I'm just going to work on this or that, or focus on my little niche, and totally forget that no matter what their niche is, it exists inside of the parameters of the Constitution, no matter what kind of law it is. But it's an unfortunate side effect of how things have gone on for far too long. So together we can take this back, though, our government and the way things are done here. So at any rate, yes. Too bad that I am not there to provide hugs, but I am here to provide constitutional advice and guidance. And it is, again, it's been a pleasure to have you guys on today. And hopefully I haven't missed any other questions or comments that people have had. Hopefully we've been able to address all of it. But like I said, please, if you want to keep our work going, our mission to help enable you, educate you, and empower you to fight for your own freedom and those that you love and those around you and those in your community, then please consider hitting that like, share, subscribe button and going to our donation page, restorefreedomkh.com/donate, where you can donate online or find ways to send money in other ways to us as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and that we'll see you in our shorter posts and videos throughout the rest of the week.